What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Then We Eat. It feels like absolutely forever since I've done an on holiday video, but the holidays are now over, so back to regular videos. In today's case, what are we going to cook now? We've done all kinds of different meals. We're running out of ideas for dinner. I'm sure you are at home at points as well. So in this week's episode, I think I have something pretty interesting. On this week's episode, we're going to be making Swedish meatballs. This is a delicacy at Ikea, and no, I'm actually not joking. Apparently Swedish meatballs are extremely popular at Ikea. So we've taken a bit of the hints of the Ikea meatballs, and we've come up with our own recipe that I think is going to be very good. To kick things off here today, Swedish meatballs need onions. So we're going to add 1 tablespoon of butter to a pan. In this case, we're using a pot because we need to make sauce later, so it just saves on dishes. So we're going to let that come up to temperature. We're going to let the butter melt. Then we're going to sweat our onions. Our butter has now melted, so I'm going to add roughly a half of a cup of onion. I have slightly less than a half of a cup because we didn't have Vidalia onions. I'd highly recommend using Vidalias. They're a little sweeter and a little less strong onion flavor. In our case, we've got a traditional yellow onion, so a little bit less just to make up for it. I'm not a big onion fan, so I'm gonna cut back. If you like onions, no problem. Add the half cup. So we're gonna cook these onions. We're not looking to necessarily fry the onion. We're doing a sweat on them. So what we're looking to do is just kind of soften them up, break them down a little bit, and they'll start to turn from like a white color to more of a translucent color. So we'll just let these sweat down for a couple minutes. Once your onions have sweat down nicely, we're going to remove the pan from the heat. We're just going to set it aside for a minute while we work on the rest of the meatballs. You want to make sure that you let the onions cool just slightly because you are putting it in cold meat and you don't want to have it warm up or cook in any way. Just a little bit safer that way. While we wait for the onions to cool, let's start working on our meatballs. First thing we're going to do for the meatballs, we're going to break bread into a bunch of little pieces. We're going to put it into a mixing bowl. I'm breaking up day-old white bread here. If you've got day-old white bread, that's best. If not, traditional, regular, same-day bread should also work. Once we've got that broken up, we're going to add a half a cup of milk to the bread, and then we're going to let that sit for a minute or two just so that the bread can soak in some of that milk. So once that bread has had a minute or two to sit, we're going to add 1 pound of ground beef, 1 pound of ground pork, 2 egg yolks plus the onions. And now for spice. We have a tablespoon of nutmeg, a tablespoon of allspice, a tablespoon of ground black pepper, and a tablespoon and a half of salt. And now let's get our hands dirty. We're just going to use our hands and we're going to mix all these ingredients together. Just keep mixing until it's all well incorporated. So my meatballs are well incorporated. You only want to mix this until they're well incorporated. You don't want to mix it too much because you risk the meatballs getting a little more tough if you do that. You want to try to keep the meat just as it is. So now it's time to actually make our meatballs. So we're going to measure out 1 ounce balls to start with just to see the size. I think 1 ounce is about the size I'm looking for. So we'll measure out 1 ounce, roll them into balls, and put them on a parchment lined cookie sheet. That's about 1 ounce there. I would say that's a pretty good size. So we're going to go with that. I'll continue making my meatballs and we'll be back when it's time to put them in the oven. And there we go, 14 meatballs done. I can do the rest off camera later because it really doesn't matter. We don't need them for dinner. At that point, all I'm going to do, measure them into 1 ounce balls, roll them, stick them in the freezer, pull them out tomorrow, vacuum seal them in about 14 or however many I end up with. And then we can pull them out and eat them whenever we want them for dinner. So these ones are going to go into the oven now. I've preheat my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to stick these in the oven and they'll be somewhere between probably about 15, maybe 20 minutes. So we'll stick them in, we'll check them after about 10, 12 minutes, see how they're doing, and then we'll be able to figure out from there how much longer they need. While our meatballs cook in the oven, we're going to start on our sauce. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter to our onion pan. You also should have saved the butter from that. You had to scrape the onions out save the butter, which we're gonna reuse now. Once our butter's melted and comes up to temperature, we're gonna add 1/4 cup of flour to our pot. This is going to act as our thickening agent. We're basically making a roux. So we're gonna add that in. We're gonna cook that flour down until it's incorporated in the butter and it starts to kind of smell like cookie. I think you've heard Steve talk about that on this channel before. It's just kind of a scent that the flour starts to give off when you know that it's starting to cook, and that's the point that you're ready to start making the actual sauce. Once your flour's had a chance to kind of toast a little bit, starts to smell like cookie like I said, we can carry on with the gravy or the sauce. We're going to start by adding 2.5 cups of beef broth to the pan. 1 cup, I'm just going to give it a stir here. Just try not to clump up that flour too much. To our beef broth mixture, we're going to add a tablespoon of ground black pepper, 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire. This will not only add flavor, but add salt. So I'm not going to add any salt, just the pepper, because this is going to make up for the lack of salt. And 2 teaspoons of bold and spicy mustard. I'm sure you've seen us use this on the channel before. It's just a Canadian brand of mustard. Not sure if you can get it in the States. Probably get something very similar though. But it's just got a nice Dijon mustard flavor with a little bit of a kick. It's just, this is excellent mustard, and I don't even really like mustard. We're gonna whisk all that together. So now that we've added all of those ingredients, we're just gonna let this sauce come up to a bit of a simmer, and just simmer away for a couple of minutes. After about 15 minutes or so, our meatballs are now finished. So I'm just gonna pull them out of the oven and I'll stick them on the cutting board for just a couple of minutes. So once this has had a chance to cook down, we're gonna add 1/2 cup of cream and 1/2 cup of sour cream to that as well. Then just give that a stir. For this recipe here today, I'm using 35% whipping cream and 5% sour cream. And once that's been incorporated together, we're gonna add our meatballs back to our sauce. Just gonna let these meatballs cook in this sauce for a couple of minutes. Doesn't have to be long. The main thing you're looking for here is to make sure your meatballs are completely coated in your sauce. So my sauce hasn't quite thickened up as much as I would like. So what I'm gonna do, easy fix. Have a little cornstarch and water here. So we're just gonna add what's called a slurry to this. It should help thicken it up just that little bit more that I'm looking for. Just stir that in. Give it another minute or two and then it should be just fine. Our sauce should be good now. We left it another minute or two. It's really starting to thicken up nice. So we're good. I'm gonna pull this off of the heat and we'll start building our plate of dinner. Now let's build our bowl. So I've gone ahead, or Debbie's gone ahead, and she's cooked some egg noodles. You can either serve this over egg noodles or you can serve it over mashed potatoes. We've gone with the egg noodles here today. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna add our meatballs and our sauce to the top of our bowl. And now it's time to give it a shot. A little pasta, little meatball. Let's see how it is. Yeah, that's very good. Oh yeah. That's very, very good. Nice flavor from the meatballs. Spices there, not overpowering. That bread gives it a nice lightness to the meatballs. That sauce is fantastic as well. That bold and spicy mustard just gives it that perfect little flavor additive. This is very, very good. Forget Ikea meatballs. You need to be trying these. So that's it for this video. Hit like if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share the video with all of your friends. Hit the notification bell to be notified when we upload next. We upload a new video every Friday and we always put the recipe in the description box below. So if you can't keep up while we're adding the ingredients, they are in the description box below. Oh, and don't forget, first we cook, then we eat. So good.